But no, it's heartbreaker. I'm not gleeful that my true net worth has gone up here in the last year and a half substantially, and I did think it would. I wrote about it early, but does that make me a happier person than I was a year and a half ago? Actually, no. I'm more concerned, more empathetic, more compassionate, more concerned. I said concerned twice than ever before, Rafi. That's facts.
Maybe you can't understand this, but I finally found what I need to be happy. And it's not friends, it's things.
Hey guys, Ralph here from the Endgame Investor, and I've got David Morgan back on the channel. The last time I spoke to David was several years ago. I think you were one of the first interviews that I had, and I think Chris Marcus introduced us. Something it was one of those people, and you're the one of the grandfathers of the silver movement, and you were a big influence on me. So we were talking about two things off camera. One is how the situation is where I am, and two was the late '90s when you started doing this. So just to riff off of that, how things are where I am, I don't even I, I don't even know what's going on at all. I can pretend that I know because I see certain headlines in the news, and I see, oh, I look at the Israeli newspaper or some website, and I say, oh, Israel's attacking Tehran, and this blew up, and that blew up, and there's warnings of sirens going in these areas in 10 minutes, and my phone goes beep, 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 and then it'll like get to your bomb shelter quick you can, and like, and then I see little explosions in the sky, but I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what's being censored.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make any sense of this. I have no idea. So I just I try to stay away from explosions. And if I see something in the sky, I'll go to the middle of my house and tell my kids to all come to the middle of the house. But I don't run to bomb shelters anymore because I think it's ridiculous. A friend of mine called me last night actually, and we were on the same team with the whole COVID stuff. We didn't believe any of the hype, and we just tried to live normal lives. And now I'm one of the only people that he trusts in terms of if we're in another sort of state psyop, which this seems to be partly that. I'm not saying there's no war. There's a war going on. I just don't know what exactly is happening. So he asked me like, how are you handling this whole situation with the bomb shelters? Because he has five young kids and he doesn't have a bomb shelter in his house, so he has to run outside at like 3 in the morning with his little children and run to a bomb shelter. And I said, like, look, like, what are the chances that that's going to help you? Because a direct hit on the bomb shelter, you're going to die anyway. And an indirect hit, your house will probably be enough to keep you getting killed from the shrapnel. So what are you doing? You're just freaking out your kids and you're driving yourself nuts. You're losing sleep. You're not going to be able to maintain your household and your marriage, and you're just going to lose your mind. So I'm staying where I am, and I'm not following any of this stuff. So that's what's happening here. It's a war. It's a psychological war between what's going on and are they really just trying to drive us nuts again? That's how I feel.
I really can't add a whole lot, but I don't know if it could be credited, but the first thing you lose in war is the truth. Isn't that the truth? I agree
Yeah.
with what you.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, we don't we don't doubt that there's a serious problem that all of our neighbors hate us, and we have to do what we have to do. The problem is we don't really know what we have to do. So, it's just like you get caught in these wars, and in the context of a fiat system that necessitates debt being added and piled up until the whole thing collapses, war is a necessity because how else are you going to increase the debt if you try to balance the budgets, the banks explode. Um, Ron Paul talked about this for decades. Like they bring you to war in a fiat system, and there's no avoiding it. So I've come to resignedly accept it and just wait for the end of the dollar. And I'm hoping that is soon. And that's why I'm excited about the gold and silver price. So we were talking about the '90s. What that nobody was interested in silver in the 1990s. So I guess the first thing I'll ask you is, um, since silver moved from 20 to 120 and now it seems to be settling at around 80 or 90 or somewhere in there. It's still bouncing around, but when you pictured this happening so many decades ago when you started getting interested, is this anything that you had imagined like this, like the world being what it is, and like, where do you think we're going? Is it just going to keep going higher until the dollar falls, and then what?
Yeah, great question. Well, I'll address the market first. And as far as anticipating, these kind of price levels, the answer is yes. When I wrote the first primer on silver, it's called Get the Skinny on Silver Investing. It was a takeoff on the Idiot's Guide collection. Was approached by the publisher, and it was certainly not my best work, but it's kind of a good overview of the silver market. And I said, I saw $100 silver, and that was, like I said, 2005. I also said many times on other interviews that I expected the market to move similar to what it did in 1980, which was basically 90% of the move came in the last 10% of the time. That's not a precise number, but it's to convey the idea that at the last leg of the major trend, it will be a large capital appreciation in a short amount of time. And that's where I think we are now. As far as the top price, I mean, this is why I'm so happy you invited me back. I honor your thoughts on it as much as my own. I don't really see the dollar going to zero, but the trend is obviously there. And what happens? And there's several scenarios, but I think the two main scenarios are one that I'm somewhat a proponent of, and that is that there will be a new system implemented or forced upon us. Could be something along the lines of a central bank digital currency before the dollar makes it to absolute zero. On the other hand, I cannot rule out, and I'm not going to speak for you, but want to hear more what you have to say than what I think. They may have miscalculated, and we could get in a situation where things grind down to where the system just does fail. Bank closures, uncertainty in the market, and what do we do at that point? As you pointed out, in my view, accurately, and I thought more like you in my earlier days than I do today. Doesn't make me right or wrong, just older. That we could see a situation where we do go to some type of pseudo, gold standard. I don't think we'll have a real true gold standard or bimetallic standard again, but we'll have some system tied to gold, tied to silver, bartering silver at some level, that type of thing. I can't rule that out. I think the system could get away from the powers that be, is what I'm saying. And if that is the case, then what does that look like? And that's really hard to put any kind of a scenario on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do see it as an inevitability, because that's where all fiat system leads. Like, just logically, whenever I go back to it and I think, well, is the dollar going to absolute zero? I'm trying to think of a scenario where it can't happen. And the only scenario I can think of where it doesn't happen is where they freeze everything and then the banks collapse. Because the only thing that keeps the banks alive is the inflationary process. Otherwise, they all fail on a domino. So no matter, like, I don't want to be part of the people that are predicting the end of society from the end of the dollar. I mean, you have people like Keith Weiner that say, well, if that really happens, then all this capital that feeds all the farms that feed all of America and all the Western world. Well, if they can't have the credit flowing through their capital systems, then they all break apart. We can't feed that many people in America and half the population dies. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. But then at the same time, I don't want to be part of that, of those people where people think that I think society is ending. But I just don't see a way that the dollar can survive and the banks can survive. It's going to be one or the other. Either the bank system is going to die, and then you have a financial reset that way, or the money is going to die, and then there will be a financial reset that way. But I always go back to hyper deflation, hyperinflation are really the same thing. It's just that the purchasing power goes back into gold and silver anyway. And in terms of a gold standard, what do I see about a gold standard? I don't see any big like UN or let's say United Financial Nations or the financial UN or whatever the equivalent of that would be, a Bretton Woods system or however you want to describe it. I don't see the big honchos getting together and deciding on a new gold standard and then everything's fine. That's not happening. But what I do see as possible is if the dollar really doesn't work, then we have to go back to the most liquid commodity, which is gold and silver, gold on a deep storage basis and for big capital transactions, and silver on a retail basis. I don't think it's going to be permanent, but I don't see any other way forward. We have to get back to liquid commodity as money, and from there we can build up a new credit system. But the dollar isn't born out of nothing; it's born out of silver, and then it switched to gold. So we have to go back to that. I can't. Can you see a way where that doesn't happen logically?
I don't know if it's logical. I mean, I'll just have to be consistent because, I do a fair amount of interviews, and my context is, what Mark Carney said when he was working at the Bank of London. And he said the same speech basically at Jackson, Wyoming, with the Fed meeting, the UN, and another place like the WEF. And basically, he said that we want an unbacked modern money theory, print to infinity, controlled by the central bank, digital currency that's implemented more or less on a global basis. My words, the last part, not his, but the implication was there. So just because that's what they want does not mean that's what's going to happen. And I'm
Yeah.
very adamant about that last statement. But nonetheless, the banks still have a great deal of power, um, unfortunately, in my opinion. But nonetheless, a lot of people will look at this universal basic income that's been a trial balloon now for quite some time, and things get harsher and harsher, AI takeovers and everything that's going on in this global mess. People want security, and if they're going to be guaranteed quote unquote security, they might just sign up for a digital based track tax system. So I don't rule it out. I'm really totally still exploring different ideas, what the different scenarios are. I don't rule yours out. In fact, I agree with it. I mean, you can't go back into history and find another way. Nonetheless, it doesn't mean the bankers won't try something, quote unquote, different.
What what do you look forward to? Um, what are the bright spots in the world that you see right now, whether they have to do with gold and silver or not, that you wake up in the morning, you're like, I think the world can be better, and I think we're on our way there. Because all bankers have always wanted to take over the world. That's nothing new. The fact that they're bankers now, it's whatever the power center is. It happens to be bankers now because we figured out that inflation really controls the masses. That's not something that humanity always understood. That's only in the last, maybe 1,000, 2,000 years. But human society is like, let's say 10,000 years old or something like that. You could say it's even older. It depends how you want to count it. But King Nimrod wanted to build a tower to heaven. No, that didn't work. And then if we skip all the way to the 20th century, Hitler wanted to take over the planet. It worked for a while, and then it didn't. So Mark Carney wants to take over the world through a central bank digital currency. Well, that's not going to work either because that's not how humanity is structured. We're not structured uh, to suffer a central power that rules over all of us. It's impossible. So what are the bright spots that you're seeing, and what keeps you going?
Well, I'll start my mission statement to teach and empower people to understand the benefits of an honest monetary system. I mean, that's why I get up every day. And I'd say the bright spots are several. One is that at the end of the great inflations, we see that people themselves come up with ideas to mitigate the problem. One you could say is a cryptocurrency. I'm not favorable to Bitcoin. I was favorable to the concept of Bitcoin in the initial white paper, but it's basically morphed off to basically the exact opposite of the original white paper. But that is a way out, you might say, as far as a competitor to the status quo. The one I think is the most logical and has the most traction is what my friends are doing in the Citizens for Sound Money, and the amount of states in the union that have reenacted legislation to use gold and silver in all transactions as long as both parties agree. And I think that could be, let's say, for a thought experiment, Rafi, that there is a digital currency and you take it or leave it. Well, in those 14 states that have gold and silver availability, you don't have to take it. You could just start using your gold and silver. And there's lots of ways to use it now that weren't available a decade ago. For example, these gold backs, that's 1/1000th of a of a gram, or excuse me, that's 1/1000th of an ounce, which at 5,000 the ounce, that's a $5 bill in gold right there. So it is pretty low denominations. You had the problem with gold previously where you couldn't divide it to those kind of units. You can now. Silver is the same thing, and then there's digital gold and silver, which you can trust or not trust, but it's a way to transact, electronically, as long as you have trust in the system. And there are systems set up with digital transfers that are accounted for. You can go visit the vaults and that type of thing. So I think it's a states' rights issue in the United States. I'm not saying globally, that's pushing back on the federal system. And of course, the Federal Reserve, as we all know, isn't federal or doesn't have any real reserves. Nonetheless, I think that's an opportunity there. And then if things go into, let's say, what you call the the end game, which I love that term, people are intuitive. They can adapt quickly. So, if you look back into smaller communities like Argentina, Venezuela, Turkey, I mean, there's many in the Silver Manifesto that were fairly recent. And what do? Well, the people gather together in kind of a flea market atmosphere where they barter and they also trade well, in the US dollar also, I'll have to admit that, in the greenback, but gold and silver. And I was a bit naive thinking, I'm thinking as an American, oh, gold coins, silver coins, constitutional silver. And that's true. But really, most of the transactions are, gold jewelry, gold chains, coins as well. But, a gold bracelet is still gold. A silver ring is still silver. So I think that there's enough of opportunities to mitigate the damage of control that the bankers want to maintain. And that's pretty evident in my view.
Let me just riff off of what you're saying. Um, so the move from, let's say, $2,000 gold to where we are now, 5,200, and the move from silver to about 25, let's say, to whatever, 90 now. I understood, this is one of the things that I understood intellectually, but I never really experienced it. That I knew that if I just kept stacking, and that includes gold and silver mining stocks to some degree, and that kind of stuff. I knew that I would gain purchasing power faster than the dollar would lose it. I understood that. But now that I'm in a war zone and the country is basically shut down, and I knew that people were struggling before, and I kept telling them, take whatever you have and get some gold and silver with whatever you have left over. And they're like, I don't have anything left over. What do I do? And I'm like, if you have nothing left over, I can't really help you. I'm not going to go into your finances and tell you what you can cut down. I'm not a financial advisor. Well, I could do that. I'm not going to spend my time doing that. It's too depressing. But now I'm really seeing it. My kids are seeing it. My I have a 15-year-old. I have a 14-year-old. I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old who I pay chores in dimes, right?
Right.
And they're like, "Ah, how much is this worth now? How much money do I have?" And I tell them, they're like, "Oh, how did that happen?" I'm like, "Because I paid you a dime and I kept doing that." But I'm just sitting here as the bombs fly over my head, and I'm fine. I mean, emotionally, it's disturbing, and I don't want to see anybody get killed, but I'm not struggling. I'm just relaxed financially, and I'm watching all of my neighbors drown, and I knew it was going to happen. And it's like when COVID hit, it's like I knew something like this was going to happen. I just now I'm feeling it. Now it's really hitting me. And I knew I've always known that when silver hits triple digits and silver and gold goes to 5, 6, 7,000, it's going to go. It's not going to be fun. I'm not having so much fun, and I know it's just going to get worse. And are you seeing something similar in your surroundings?
Well, I'm old enough to have gone through the 1980 blow off, and I was in it. and I was a very, much younger man. And, I mean, the people that made a lot of, fiat and the gold run and silver run, it was happy times. 1980. I mean, you could buy your boat or buy the sports car or upgrade your house, and things, because things were very calm. And, the in my generation, particularly the boomers, I mean, everyone's, in my view, pretty greedy, but nonetheless, that's what was. But this time it's a whole different scenario. I mean, first of all, you really don't want to broadcast your wealth if you have, physical gold and silver. Then on the other hand, being big-hearted and humanitarian based and, gone as far into life as I have, you want to be able to help also. So, there's that part of me, but no, it's totally different. I mean, this is, um, it's a heartbreaker is what it is to see that we've got, set up for most revolutions where you have this huge differential between the elite class with the billions and everybody else. Of course, you and I are fine. We've stacked, me longer than you, I'm sure, but nonetheless, and, we're fine. But most aren't. And so, how do you mitigate that? And what does the transition we talked about look like? We don't know. We don't want to visit that again. But no, it's heartbreaker. I'm not gleeful that my true net worth has gone up here in the last year and a half substantially, and I did think it would. I wrote about it early, but does that make me a happier person than I was a year and a half ago? Actually, no. I'm more concerned, more empathetic, more compassionate, more concerned. I said concerned twice than ever before, Rafi. That's facts.
Well, I want to reflect on something that you said about Bitcoin earlier. And I was listening to a debate. Some people don't know this about me, but I worked for I worked for Calvin Ayre. This again, this he's a gambling guy, billionaire, and he had this site calvinair.com. It was a gambling site, and I was the financial analyst guy. So I'd pick a gambling stock and then I'd write about it. And then they started paying me in Bitcoin because there was just no other way for them to give me any. There's no other way for them to pay me. They couldn't pay me in US dollars because they're a gambling site. They couldn't pay me in shekels because they weren't because I didn't want the a gambling company to pay into my Israeli bank account. And then I have to answer questions like, well, why are you working with a gaming company, blah blah blah, and there's all these regulations. So I was like, how are you going to pay me? So they still pay me in Bitcoin. I was like, what's that? So. So I just left the Bitcoin there from like 2013 to 2016. And then I bought a car with it and I still have the car. So like I sold out at like $1,500. So I call it my $50 million Renault. But but so anyway, but that's just I laugh, but I don't care about that. Whatever. Um so I was listening to this debate, this explanation that you said that Bitcoin, the technology was exciting, but Bitcoin was supposed to be transactional money, but then they cut off the transaction cap at like seven, and so now they decided it was digital gold instead, and then there was a split in the community between Bitcoin Cash, so they could make it more of a transactional currency, but then the BTC people said no, we're just going to make it digital gold, so people just hold it and don't spend it. And then I was thinking like these people were upset because the community split and they tried to get control over the brand name of Bitcoin, whether you want to call it BTC or BCH or BSV, and there are all these different camps. And I'm thinking like, this is inevitable. This was inevitable the whole time because when you really look at what BTC or Bitcoin is, or if you want to call it BSV or Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, I know all this. People think I don't. I'm not aware of this, but I am. I just don't really care about it that much and I'll tell you why I don't care about it. Because inside of the BTC, inside of the BCH, inside of all this stuff is nothing. So
Right.
when you have inherently nothing there, all you have are power struggles, and you have to control the name brand to get all the power behind it. But with the blockchain itself, if you have a scalable blockchain, and with that you have an ability to divide gold or tokenize gold or silver or whatever commodity you want, then you can have some real power. And that itself, the fact that there's something real behind the blockchain, will itself decentralize it because then you can have real competition in the market, and you're not just warring over a brand name, right? That's just a nothingness. you can have this company is storing silver over here and has this blockchain, and that blockchain is so much better because you can do the transactions easier or this way or that way. And then this other company will store gold and silver over there, and they'll say, no, no, our blockchain is better. Try it out, and you have real competition in the market, right? That's how I see. And then it was like a flash. It occurred to me like, okay, blockchain is good. I think it could work. And then the way I see it, if that actually does get off the ground, I think it will. I think Keith Wiener's working on some kind of gold blockchain now, and there's already two. There's Pax Gold and one other one. I forgot what it's called.
Kinesis, and there's Glint.
Okay, so yeah, you have these companies, and some of them will fail, and some of them will cheat, and some of them will be honest. I don't know which ones are going to do which yet. It's still young.
Yes.
But when you have that, you can really have a decentralized monetary system. And then in competition with a central bank digital currency, which will inflate into nothingness pretty quickly, I think from there that the central banks will lose control. So that was my first positive thoughts about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a purpose. It was to introduce the blockchain technology through which we can transact in money better, but it has to be money. It can't be nothing.
Ditto. I can't add to that. Perfectly stated, and I agree. That's the way I see it. And I guess I will go one step further. I mean, I did 30 podcasts on my blog, all for free. It took, I don't know, well over a year, I believe. So if you go to the blog tab on the Morgan Report and you get, I don't know, 1,700 posts or something like that, 2,000, there's a lot. I've been here a while. But if you type in the search engine crypto conspiracy, it'll bring up all 30. And it shows from the very beginning how Bitcoin came about and the ties to Jeffrey Epstein and MIT and on it goes. I don't want to go further down the rabbit hole, Rafi, but I concur with you. If anything good came out of it, it's as you stated, it's that we could do um, multiple transactions in real money and have competition. I was associated with a program that failed. It's not. It's somewhat embarrassing, but I didn't know what I was involved with for quite some time. Regardless, one of our thoughts was discounts on some merchandise. We were trying to work heavily in South America and Mexico, and the thought was on the refilling your phone card, which most of the Mexican population does, that they paid for it in silver. Their 10 pesos would be loaded onto their phone card with an 8 peso purchase if they use silver. In other words, you get a 20% discount using silver. Just an idea, but giving it back to you that, yeah, there'll be competition and, one will be better than the other. I like this one because where it's stored. I like this one because it's faster. I like this one because I get rewards, whatever. But there is a use for it. I agree.
Mhm. So just to close it off, just one more question, and then tell us where the viewers can reach you. Um, how do you see the future of America? Do you think it'll survive in its current political structure, or do you see the states breaking up into different pieces or regions breaking up into different regions? Are we going to keep California and New York and Colorado and all those crazy places?
Yeah. Well, the answers I don't know, but what do I
Mhm.
think? I do think we're going to go back to states' rights. I think a lot of more independently thinking states such as Idaho next to me, Texas, Nevada, mostly in the West, not to say some of the breadbasket of America and the very conservative middle of the country, Kansas, other states, Oklahoma, wouldn't just say, enough is enough. I mean, if you look at the Bill of Rights, really, I mean, if you look at the foundation, we were Constitution and the government was formed to protect our God-given rights. I mean, if you really want to get in the court and speak eloquently, you would say, I am I'm using my God-given, constitutionally secured rights. Rights did not come from the government. The government was there to protect them. Of course, all that's upside down, as you well know. But it doesn't mean with all that we ceded all of our rights. We ceded all of our rights. Let me reframe that. We gave a little bit of our rights to the government for mutual benefit to protect us, basically. Now, the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment, talks about states' rights, which supersedes federal rights. And remember, the federal government is a district, it's not a state. But how did the District of Columbia become more powerful than all the states? And that's a very long story which I have somewhat of an answer to, but we don't have time to do it. Nonetheless, I think that there will be states that push back. And, being in China one time, I've been to Hong Kong several times, but I don't consider that to be China. Being in Beijing for, I think, about 10 days, I certainly don't have a great feel for it, but I picked up on one of their sayings in Mandarin, and that is the emperor is very far away, meaning that, they can do what they do in Washington, D.C., but it's not really affecting me as much as most people think. And I might be out doing my thing that morally is correct. It might be breaking some law down in some county somewhere. But as long as I'm not hurting anyone else, I'm really not committing. So I think it's going to go that direction. I think people can only be pushed so far, and they push back, or they ignore it, or start their own communities, or there are communities that have put up like going back to the illness situation that basically made their own within their own small jurisdiction. Excuse me, in their own small jurisdiction, said no, no, we're not doing it. We're not
Wait,
using
so
masks.
so so I wanted to just put this thought. You just inspired me to think about something else, and I want you to challenge what I'm saying here because I want to hear something better. But
Okay.
you said that people have their breaking point, and at some point they'll say this is enough. Well, didn't you think that that was going to happen in 2020 when they said everybody stay in your house and don't move and don't visit your sick relatives in the hospital and don't send your kids to school and lock them in their room for 2 weeks and nobody said anything?
Yes, I two things. One is that if you go back to the revolution, the American Revolution, it wasn't 98%, it was like 2 or 3%. We probably had that many that didn't wear masks. I was one, I mean, I'll be honest, I did wear masks at times, but there were times I just didn't, and then I got kicked out or whatever. So I think it doesn't take a majority to turn it because, as the old adage goes, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And the second one is one I interviewed. I can't pronounce his name correctly, but he's Polish Canadian minister, pastor that was harassed drastically
Oh,
with.
yeah, yeah, I remember
I
him.
interviewed him. It's probably one of the best interviews I've done in my 20 plus years. And I asked him basically the same question you're asking me. Well, when did you in your home country get to the point where you finally did something? And his answer surprised me and it made me a bit heart sick. But he said, until they lost everything, until they had absolutely nothing left, they didn't turn. And that was a wake up call for me because, being an idealist, I'm like you. Well, they push us into this lockdown restriction crap, you know, and some did. So I still think it doesn't take a majority to turn it around. But
Mhm.
that answer from Pastor Pulaski, it's something like that. Forgive me, sir. But
Mhm.
that was like, wow, that was one of those moments. It's sort of like people with, and, we're all familiar with this. We don't talk about it in financial channels, but drug addiction or alcoholism. I mean, in America, it affects almost everybody, not directly, but indirectly. Your family knows your remote relative that had a problem, kind of thing. And until they hit bottom, they're not going to get better. So it's sort of societally wise, we've got to hit a bottom. What does that look like, Ralphie? I'm not sure. It may
Right.
be where nothing remains, the banks are closed, and we wake up in that movie rollover where everything comes to a standstill. But the wheat fields are there, the cornfields are there, and human labor is there. And we start working through it and we start bartering, bushels of corn for apples and bushels of corn for pieces of silver. And, things start moving again. I don't know if it's going to go that far or not, but I certainly can't rule it out.
Okay. So yeah, that's encouraging. So we could frame what you were saying as the reason that the masses didn't get up with their pitchforks is that while they were being locked down, they were being fed with bailouts and fake money that numbed the pain. But when that fake money runs out, people are not going to take it anymore because they would have no other alternative. Literally, you see that it's not just a society. Yeah, it's with drug addicts, it's with society, but it's also even with healthy people, and they're just in a rut, and they're just in a dead end job, and they have to decide, well, am I going to go out on my own and do something or not? If they really feel they have no choice, then they'll do what they have to do, even though it's very scary. It's with any kind of growth in life is going to require that you're going to feel like you have no choice, and you're just going to do it. That's what they talk about war heroes. They're like, oh, how did you just bravely just charge the field? It was like, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I had to do it. And that's how it is with all of us, really.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, so where can the audience find you? And and also thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoy our conversations because you've been through this longer than I have, and it gives me faith that I'll get to whatever. If you've been at this long, I can get through the other side of it, and I think we'll both see it wherever it's coming soon.
Yeah, my main website is themorganreport.com. Everything branches off from there. There's a 1, 2, 3 process. Step one's get on the free newsletter. Step two is to look at two films. One is called Horseman film, which is about the end of the Age of Empire, which if you haven't seen it, it's worth the hour and a half time, maybe on a weekend. And a film that I helped produce, which is called this Silver Sunrise. It's available at silversunrise.tv. And maybe if you have time, Rafi, to look at it, you might want to take a look and maybe I could interview you. It looks at the spiritual side of money more than just the foundational aspect of money and how the bankers or money's control or money powers, I like to call them, instill fear and stress in society because of the control over the fiat system and what we can do about it. So that's at silversunrise.tv. And the last one, step three, is if you want to get involved on the paywall side, which I won't talk much about, but I really do appreciate it. I do look at your stuff very often. I do retweet it very often, and it's just great to have you in the silver community, or what I like to call the honest money movement. I don't know if you're here to that or not, but you know, what's fair is fair, and it's been proven throughout the ages that people decide what money is, not government. And when we have a sound money system, it's not a perfect world, but it's certainly better than what we have.
Yeah, yeah. There's only one biblical imperative on economics, and that is don't steal, and the rest flows from there. That's pretty much it. Yeah. Okay. So have a good week, and hopefully there won't be any bombs where you are. I don't think there will be, and hopefully there will be
Okay.
no bombs where I am. So there probably will be, but hopefully none near me. And I'll see you soon.